Hey guys, we have another resin for you today, another casting resin specifically, coming to you from MACK4D. This is their premium grade casting resin, currently called Jewel Cast. However, I do have it on pretty good authority that this is a working name, and it's almost certainly going to change to fit something more in line with their Tycho lineup. The other casting resin that they have in their lineup is called Tycho G. Make sure you get subscribed because we will be reviewing that in the very near future. We tested this material on the Asiga Max X35 and the Mars 3, but with pretty mixed results. Something worth noting though is that the Asiga Max X we currently have is 385 nanometer and the Mars 3 is 405 nanometer. Besides that nanometer wavelength thing though, by far the biggest hurdle for us was overcoming the heating that this resin requires. Our studio space where we have our printers living averages a very livable 22 degrees Celsius during this very weird Canadian winter. However, this is a little bit low for most resins, which usually require about 25 C for optimal performance. Jewel cast resin, by contrast, requires a constant 35 C. This is not a problem for the Asiga though, because it has an environmental controller inside the printing chamber. This is definitely an issue for the Mars 3 as it has nothing of the sort. When this resin has been sitting at room temperature, it gets really, really thick, like stew thick, and reminds me of when we tested the ResinWorks EasyCast 400, which has like a cold curry type soup consistency. Rather gross. Anyway, Jewel Cast has this very opaque red color, and it reminds me of an old injection wax. I've actually since used that old wax, but I have this this yellow one. This is Castaldo Super Serra, and there's a smell to this stuff that is really hard to get across to you guys without, Futurama smell-o-vision. If you haven't carved jewelry wax before, especially the older stuff, there's a very distinct smell. The Jewel Cast has that kind of a smell to it. Moving on though, we got some really great prints off of the Asiga and some pretty okay prints off of the Mars. So let's take a quick look at the prints. The first thing that I really like about these prints is, of course, the print quality is phenomenal. But moreover, you see all this white stuff in there. That, I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it is not a problem because we left it on there for our casting test. I believe this is more a result of the alcohol. Jewel Cast does not require any major special treatment. Essentially, what you do is you wash it in IPA or ethyl alcohol, and then you dry it. You don't have to do any UV post-curing whatsoever. So these came off the printer. They were done and ready to cast very, very quickly. And the print quality is phenomenal, of course, as I mentioned already on the DLP. The resin itself is fairly brittle, but you can see all of the design, all of the stone settings, all the holes came out perfectly. All the prongs are there exactly where they need to be. Just a flawless, flawless print. So I'm very, very happy with these results. The casting results are also phenomenally good. Definitely no issues that I would attribute to the resin itself. Only things that kind of come up during the casting process that are almost unavoidable. As per usual, we used our very standard burnout procedure, the same burnout cycle that we use for every resin. We use R&R Plasticast in a 4x6 flask. We cast in silicon bronze. We tried to keep everything the same so that we can always go back and compare this to every other resin that we've tested. Speaking of, if you haven't seen all those other ones, I believe we're up to 22 resins now. Go back and check some of them out because there's definitely some gems in there that you won't want to miss. This is a great resin, but there are many more as well. So let's take a quick look at these castings here. We'll do a side-by-side comparison, but please bear in mind that this is on the Mars and this is off the Asiga. So there's going to be a few little detail differences. These castings have only been tumbled. We haven't done any post-processing. We just cut them off their sprue. and that was it. Now I do see a tiny little bit of surface texture in there, but very, very small. I do see some underneath the jaw, but nothing that wouldn't be easily sanded off or probably come off with like an NYC Triple E buff. This model came out incredibly well. Nothing really to write home about. As I mentioned, all this white stuff that's accumulated, it doesn't seem to affect anything. It washes off relatively easily. I don't know what it is. I believe it's alcohol related, but again, hasn't been an issue. Let's move on to the one that had the most issues. So this signet ring, these signet rings in general are about as heavy as we go. That's why I put these in, is so that every model has like a different something to bring to the table. You know, we've got the ultra stone settings, and then we have the heavier model. And in this one, we actually do start to see some surface texture. Very, very lightly though. I don't know what that could be. It looks kind of more porosity based, judging by some of the look. So it's not necessarily resin related, but this is pretty typical of the heavy rings. So this one didn't turn out phenomenally well, but it is what it is, and if the prints are anything to go by, it may just be something that we have to work towards. Like we may need a little bit of boric acid just to compensate for some of the heavy thermal expansion that's going on. But overall, it's still a pretty good result. Let's move on to the engagement ring. Tiny bit of surface texture up there, a little bit down there, and a little bit here. So not phenomenal, but again, it's not heavy, so it could be forgiven. For a resin that doesn't require any post-UV curing, it's definitely something that I would consider passable, but I have seen better results before, so that's just worth noting. And this is the pave ring. As you can see there, like all the stone settings came out really nice. This one excelled incredibly well. I feel like this resin is going to be really good at fine details, but it's not going to work so well on heavy things. As you can see, there's a little bit of surface texture here, right at the point where it starts to get a little bit thicker, but there's absolutely no sign of it on any of the stone settings. So that's something worth noting. Again, it may be a little bit of a boric acid fix, but the instructions specifically say not to use boric acid, don't do any post-processing, just an alcohol wash and a dry, and that's all you should need. Still incredibly good results. This is not unfixable, and I have seen way worse results when it comes to the pave stone settings. This is an A+ result when it comes to the stone settings. I don't see a single one filled in. So that alone is interesting to me. And then very last, very quickly, we've got the tiny little engagement ring. This one turned out great. This kind of is a reason why I think this resin is going to excel at really small details, because this is so thin. This isn't really surface texture, it's just more of like a finish, and that would be buffed off immediately. It's actually a little bit not round because of the when I snipped this off, it kind of got jostled and bumped. But other than that, like it's a flawless casting, and I think this is great. Fine. Many resins don't excel at large, heavy prints like what I work with. So this is not, it's not unreasonable. So I'm not saying that this resin isn't good at casting large models. All I can confirm is that at least you have to take into account some considerations when it comes to helping the cast happen. Use much larger sprues whenever possible. Make sure you have adequate ventilation and airflow inside your kiln. Make sure that you have the optimal orientation at about that 45 degrees away from the sprue, and all of that ash and anything else that goes along with it has a chance to escape down that main sprue. Moving on to the price. At the moment, Jewel Cast is priced quite high. It's not the highest that we've ever tried at 289 euros for 1 kilo, which converts roughly to 325 USD with a little bit of change. It is certainly high. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Jewel Cast is currently a running name, it's a project name that will be very likely changed in the near future. The cost is also expected to come down as well as MACK4D further develops their brand. Make sure you bookmark MACK4D, especially if you're in Europe, as this material has been, I believe it's manufactured in Germany. It's definitely sold out of Germany. So if you're located in Europe in general and you want a premium grade casting resin and want to avoid currency conversion, VAT, and large shipping bills, definitely worth keeping your eye on this company as it develops. So in summary, MACK4D Jewel Cast is certainly a premium grade material that performs exceptionally well. It requires no UV post-curing, which I think is amazing, and it really speeds up my workflow and yours as well. The biggest hurdle with this resin is the temperature issue, but that is very solvable. For us, we had the Asiga with the environmental controller, but you can also just simply put a heater next to your printer, regardless of what it is. My personal thoughts, this resin is nice and I will certainly enjoy using what's left of the bottle. In terms of geographics though, just shipping to Canada is quite a distance, and shipping from Europe adds up really quickly. Something that I struggle with more recently actually with Prusa. Our SL1S is currently down. We had an issue with our control board, and getting parts over from the Czech Republic, or in this case Germany, adds up pretty quickly. If MACK4D could establish a reseller or a distributor on this side of the ocean, I would seriously consider adding all of their resins to my normal lineup. So that's all for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review of Jewel Cast. If you want any links to that, find them in the description below. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment or reach out to us on socials. If you need help in general with casting, printing, anything, don't hesitate to ask away. And feel free to check out our membership program, where we have a growing number of people in our Discord group. So that's all for this video. Thank you very much. Once again, I will see you guys in the next one.